I sat down with Ryan Tansom today. Ryan is someone who has a particularly interesting story and someone who is making waves when it comes to how to really think about what it is you want to do in life and in business and how those two don't have to be mutually exclusive. So he's the co-founder and president of Arkona, a business geared towards helping entrepreneurs actually live out the reality they want to create for themselves, and is also the owner of a podcast called Intentional Growth, where he's had over 250 episodes and spoken with some incredible guests. Today's episode is absolutely jam-packed and it's a little longer, but I can tell you what, I cannot wait to get him on a second time because just the sheer insights that I garnered sitting with him for an hour has changed the way I look at how I'm building businesses. I hope you guys get the value out of it that I did. Hi, and welcome to Successful Scales, the show where I interview now successful professionals about their journey and try and garner insights onto any tips that can be applied to your business at home. Whether it's financial freedom or the exit of your company, wherever your journey may take you, the idea here is to simply learn from those who have done it before. I hope you enjoy and you get some value out of this. Buckle up and enjoy the episode. All right, after a very, very long intro, Ryan, it's an absolute pleasure to finally record and actually get into this, get to the meat of it. How you doing, mate?
Doing good, Yanni. This is awesome. I'm super pumped.
Yeah, and I'm super grateful to have you on an episode of Successful Scales. I mean, we just gelled so well over the first few times we had a chat, and it just made a whole lot of sense. And I mean, you've got a super interesting story. Before I sort of jump into it and get to the value and the questions and all the things that are running through my mind with what I know about you, I'd love you to tell everyone who is listening a little bit about yourself, just to sort of lay the foundation, give us some context.
So I will absolutely do that. And I don't know, based on your listeners, you're a real dude, man. And I enjoy it so much. So I'll say that I'm in my mid 30s. I've got twin girls that are 4.5, and us talking about the business stuff is going to be easy compared to raising twin girls. And so going back to the actual story of the family business, my dad started it when I was like 10. And when the family business, he started it, he bought $250,000 of copiers, used Panasonic, and 30-day terms, and sold them all in 30 days. And fast forward, I worked in a business my whole life. And when I started full-time, right as the market crashed in 2009, we hit 21 million in revenue, 115 employees, had 3 locations, copiers, and then also the service behind it. My dad had ran it. He had a GM in place. And so for about 5-6 years, it was a lifestyle business because it was self-running. When I say lifestyle, we can get into that, but essentially it was kicking off cash. He was fine. He was dealing with a bunch of personal stuff. So when I started in sales, and essentially, Yanni, we lost a bunch of money that year, for just like a lot of people did. And we spent the next 5.5, 6 years turning the business around. So I built out, fired half the employees by the time I was like 25, and rebuilt the new ones. And this was a team effort with my dad and I. And new ERP system, sold a couple of the branches for cash, and then also built out the managed IT services, the document management, rebranded to be the business to business technology player we knew we needed to be, turn the whole business around. And here's kind of the root of like the mission that I'm on, is that we were sitting there and we started getting into these challenging debates of like, what do we do with this business? My dad never wanted to get back in, never got passionate about it again. And I loved it. It was kind of my baby. I was running the business. So all the executives were reporting to me. My dad was still the, chairman, CEO, however you want to call it. And he wanted to pull more money out of the business. I wanted to reinvest. We'd already reinvested a couple million at that point in the managed IT. And he's like, I'm never going to get this back. I want out. I don't like the business as much as I used to. Just different visions. And we met with all these advisors, investment bankers, CPAs, attorneys, bankers, you name it. And no one could really sit us down and say, Corey, Ryan, here's what you want. Let's reverse engineer into the plan. And so what we felt, and this is the emotional side of this, is that you feel trapped, and entrepreneurs who can generally do whatever they want and work on whatever they want, potentially and often make really drastic decisions to get out of that feeling. So we sold the business. It's a drastic decision, but we couldn't figure out how to make progress towards this vision that we each had. So we did what we knew, and given the lack of education, given whatever education we had, and we sold the business, sold it to a competitor. the nature of the strategic sale that we went down was, it was a complementary business that was a local competitor. So we gutted the business, fired 2/3 of the employees. It was a primary, the asset that they were buying was the customers and the ability to cross sell, eliminate a competitor. So they got the value that they wanted to, and I don't ever blame them. I used to, but I don't, because that was the nature of the deal. I just didn't know that was going to be the result. So sitting there, I lasted 60 days in the company, and that was in 2014, and paid a bunch of taxes, a bunch of debt off, which you have to do. And I went, what in the hell was that? I really wish I would have known how this whole thing works, so that way I could have had more control over my situation. So fast forward 7 years, I consulted for a while, built out the podcast to have as a sandbox to learn and meet great people, which you and I talked about, 250 episodes in now, and built this training. Essentially, Yanni, it was like, if we would have understood how valuations and exits and strategic planning and financials and all the stuff we can talk about, how the game worked, we could have reverse engineered into our plan, because all we really wanted to do was create wealth, enjoy work, and make an impact. And then I think every entrepreneur has this vision of what they want for the business in their life, and their lack of progress is probably the eats at their soul, and they don't know where they're going. So we need to be able to spend the time and money and energy in the right places that get us closer, but we have to articulate, where the hell were we going and why, and do we have something that's actually a vehicle, which is the business, that's going to get us there? Or are we just waking up, hustling our butts off and hoping that the vision somehow miraculously comes into clarity?
Mate, I have to say, I have just written down the most number of notes that I've ever written down on an opening section of someone talking about their experience and where they're at. Wow. What an interesting journey. What an interesting challenge. What a way to sort of leverage what, at a young age, you've gone through so many more things than, I would say most people do in their careers. Someone told me a crazy stat, and no one hold me to this. I don't know if it's true, but it's
fact check. No,
yeah. We're not at that level. We've got fact checkers,
Yeah.
but I heard that only about 5% of the population are business owners, and so when I say not a lot of people have gone through that experience, it's that you have to go through that experience to come into a family-run business, which I find super interesting to see how you, and I think your father's name Corey, if I heard that
Good
correctly.
research. Yeah.
So like what that dynamic was like and a whole lot of things. But mate, incredible. So you didn't name your podcast. You said 250 episodes, but I think going through 250 episodes, and especially the topics you cover, just for those listening at home, tell us a little bit more about the podcast.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And it's funny that you actually mentioned that, because I don't bring it up very much, because it's just a side thing, because we don't monetize it. It's a way that started off as this intellectual journey. And so it's kind of a big deal, and I don't really think about it as a big deal until it kind of gets brought up. So it's called Intentional Growth. It was renamed. It used to be called Life After Business, and then I realized that no one wants to exit because they essentially are trapped. So I was like, okay, well, let's talk about intentional growth, which is about understanding how to grow value with the end in mind. And it's been every week since 2016 or something like that, and I think it's close to 400,000 downloads, and people like Gina Wickman, editor of Inc. magazine, John Warlow, Jack Stack, just anybody that I think could help piece together this big black hole of like, what is it that we're all marching towards? Because like getting, the blind leading the blind, following towards, seed round A, B, C, D round, all to raise money in Silicon Valley. That's not everybody. So like, what is the spectrum of entrepreneurship, and what does that look like? And yeah, man, it's been a blast. Like, just getting to know people and having these kind of discussions has just been a lot of fun, and then trying to make sense of it, right? Because like I'm a big proponent of frameworks, because like if I can understand like, hey, here's the picture of the puzzle and here's the border, I can solve or hire and help people get the pieces together. But most people, these topics just float out there, and they're like, how does like this relate to that? Like this valuation or this exit relate to what I'm doing today? And I think that's this big challenge of like trying to make the stuff that people listen to on these shows actionable to their own situation.
Yeah, absolutely. When I hear you sort of express why you went down that journey and why you started it, my logic, my reasons were almost the same as well. Why I created it to learn and to connect with people who are doing really interesting things. And I'm far earlier down that track. This is probably my, I don't know, nearly 40th maybe episode that I've recorded, something in that vicinity over the last 4 months. And, it's been a very
Way
interesting.
more than most, man. My podcast hosting company said that only 5% of podcasts make it over 9 episodes. So
What percent?
yeah, like it's like only 5%. It's just like a blog. Like someone wants to like get rich quick and they got something to say, they plug in a USB mic and Zoom, and there you go, you got a show. So
Yeah.
like, keep on it, man. Like the long tail, it's a real thing.
Well, you talked about frameworks, and I want to dig into that. And you also mentioned Gino Wickman. The last person that I was fortunate to interview wasn't Gino. I'll get him one day. But his successor, his successor, Mike Payton.
Peyton. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
legend.
Nice.
Was a
He's
great.
a he's a Minnesota guy, man. He's
Yep.
right down the road.
Yeah, yeah, he is too. And yeah, he was great. I mean, we can talk. I'm sure we could do a whole session on EOS and traction and the value that that brings as a fundamental to the business. But I want to dive in more so to you. Just knowing how many questions I have here, and you stepped into a business. You're in your late teens, if I'm not mistaken, when you
20,
joined.
22.
22. So you're 22. My mistake. And
All good.
and you come into the family run business. Granted, it's already a large operation at that time and it's been running for a long time. But I mean, and also for context as well. So my dad has been serving as our sort of, let's call him our fractional CFO. And and he's brilliant. He's built 4 or 5 businesses and exited. And he is the classic entrepreneur. And the advice he always used to give me is actually go and work for someone, learn on someone else's dollar. He actually never really pushed me in the direction of entrepreneurship and working for myself. And, I think it was great advice. But I told my co-founder, Lippy, listen, he's going to be a great resource. I will not fucking work with him. You cannot put me with him. He's brilliant. I love him to death. And we have a great conversations. And I'll ask him questions and he brings a lot of value, but I couldn't work with him. He would just drive me up the wall. So I'm curious, as someone who successfully worked with their father, what was that like?
Pretty much about what you just described. Yeah, I mean, it's everything that any story that someone can think of right now has probably been played out in the relationship my dad and I had going through that. The one thing I would say is that my desire and his desire to keep a friendship alive, and we have a unique and it's more friendship than the whole father. I call him father, he calls me son. Like that kind of dissipated when I jumped right into the shitstorm of the business. And it was like, hey, we want this to work. We want to be friends. Let's do everything necessary to make it all work. And so that was a weird situation to overcome because you're moving in and out of different roles so often. And that this is going to potentially lend some insight into a later concept that we can talk about ownership roles versus management roles, which is, I think, is one of the most fundamental ones that people, if they understood it, could change their relationship with their business and their partners. But like, yeah, and we'd sit down and like, so I'm like, okay, what hat are we wearing? And we essentially, I tried to quit multiple times, like major fights, but then like major like ups and downs. So like, it's all that. And like, it was never worth blowing up because we both needed each other. The business, I had some very instrumental parts of the business. I mean, obviously I couldn't kick him out and buy him out. So like, it was just like, we're here together. We got to make this work because this business, this shared asset, is providing for both of us, our careers, our money, and it's worth a lot of money. So we think so. Anyways, trying to figure that out. I think if the end result is so important, you'll go through all the shit to get there. But what happened was, what was instrumental, one consultant at one point said, okay, guys, your friends, your father's son, your boss employee, your partnerships, your mentor, mentee, both ways. Because my dad learned, I mean, it just like there's like 6 or 7 roles going on here. Let's just start by each of you. When you say something, say what hat you're wearing. So like that way, if you think about it, like, cause I love to read and learn and all this stuff. And my dad is not as much of that at camp. I consume the digital content of today's world. And when I would go say, you got to learn this, we got to do this. And like, if an employee is telling your boss that, it sounds patronizing or, disrespectful. So like, it was this weird way to navigate roles. And then there was this whole different, like, once you get that figured out, how do you figure out what the vision is for the business and what the cash is needed? And then how do you align all that stuff? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get that alignment.
I can imagine, and actually, a lot of my notes are about that too. I was really thinking through, and you said that you guys went through a rebranding, and you sort of went through that shift. I mean, coming in firstly, 2008, 2009, the stock market crash, everything's turned to shit. To have to also take on it, looked like you also in a sales function. I mean, that in itself is like, it's literally, you couldn't ask for anything worse, realistically.
The only silver lining, it's probably the best silver lining of that, Yanni, is that I was so naive at 22. I didn't even know what the hell was going on. So I jumped in as a salesperson in the bullpen next to 22 other people, and I have two choices. Do I work twice as hard as everybody else, so I can at least be proven that I'm not some young prick that's an entitled a-hole that's the owner's son, or I could just fall in line in that role and just do nothing and be the a-hole owner's son who does nothing. And I'm gonna work twice as hard. And I didn't really know what was going on in the marketplace. And so it was 400 phone calls, 15 appointments, 5 proposals, 3 net news, 50 grand in sales every month. That's the copier business,
Wow.
man. So like, if you like, sales is super easy to hire and fire for, because you either hit your numbers or you're fired.
Yeah.
Like, so it was an easy role to at least be measured by in the business. And so I just went right into it. But it's after that, to your point, when I started getting opinions about like how the business should operate, again, he's not involved, right? So I'm calling him in and out of like the meetings or like before or after work, kind of relaying how things are going. And I'm just like, well, this is potentially mine at some point. I want it to be better. And so then it was like this, how do we balance my desire to make it better without offending him about the current state?
So one thing I wanted you to sort of point out, and then I want to see how you sort of navigated that, because you said that it was a lifestyle business at the time with your father in it, and I think that's a really important, especially knowing your experience and what you're doing now with intentional growth and how you're helping businesses make better decisions. How do you define a lifestyle business, and what are the other options to other businesses that might exist?
Super good question. And I think that, and it's taken me a long time and a lot, like all the interviews and all the things that I've been doing to come up with like the root problem. And I think it's how the business owner or entrepreneur views their company. And the reason I started it like that, because people usually are looking for, is it $1 million business or a $50 million business or A round or B round of raise? I'm like, no, it's how they view this business. So if it's a lifestyle business, it's super noticeable for me because the owner, and I'm going to call owner because the owner and entrepreneur and founder can all be kind of intertwined, but like, this is a financial asset that's generating cash flow, right? So I don't really like work with, I mean, I've got people that have come through this that are raising money, but if you raise money from a venture capitalist, like, you have to sell that to give their money back at some point, and you pretty much are being told what to do, whether you say it or not. You got a board, you got investors. So let's park that over here. And these are founders that bootstrapped it, that got, whatever money they can from their family, friends. So a lifestyle business is one where the owner is trying to optimize for annual income. What is my salary? How do I max out my perks and max out my distributions to have the most awesome time ever? And then kind of balance that with freedom. And most people get this really wrong because they try and suck all the money out without reinvesting while also having freedom. And that doesn't usually work. So I got examples, Yanni, where it's a $100 million business and doing 10 million in EBITDA, and they're taking all the money out to buy ranches and yachts and all this stuff, not realizing that that company is a financial asset and you need to reinvest into your people, your processes, your systems to maintain and grow the value of that company asset over time. So if you have to to finish that thought is if you go all the way down to $500,000 in EBITDA or cash flow, net income, I don't know people's financial acumen here, but like cash flow. So if it's $500,000, if it's between hiring that GM for 120 grand when you can barely afford it, or getting that cabin or second house or car, you've conflated this financial asset versus like what is your lifestyle. And so the second part of that concept, and I think these are the annual income versus long-term value creation. The second one is ownership role versus your management role. Pay yourself market rate for what you do. If you're a salesperson, if you're an engineer, if you're an SEO expert, like you can hire those skills out. You're not God's greatest gift to this planet. I can guarantee that. A lot of people think that they are, but guess what? Private equity firms replace people all day long for a paycheck. So there is something that you do in that job or in that business. That's a job that you get paid for. And it might be spread out a bunch of different departments. So you have 100% of your time. A quarter might be sales, a quarter might be admin, a quarter might be service, but like figure that out. And then you normalize. We're going to get too, I don't want to get too far down, but you have this cash flow that comes from your paycheck. And if your lifestyle creeps in the need to make those distributions, you've creeped into the reserves of your financial asset. So by shifting your mindset away from annual income towards long-term value growth, essentially you're saying, if I've got $1 million in cash flow, let's say you got 300 grand in tax, you got 700 left. What are you going to do with it? You might want to pull 300 out for your lifestyle. Fine. Don't make sure your lifestyle is needed for that. And if you're going to put 400 grand back in, it better well grow the value of your company. Otherwise, don't put it back in. Don't do it because your employee, a flashy object, or you went to a conference and someone said you need to do something. Like just like a real estate investor would say, I'm going to do these things. It's going to grow the value of the real estate this much. Have that level of discipline and awareness. So that way, like when you sit down and you go, I got 700 grand, what should I do with it? It's just like it's kind of this framework, Donnie, to be able to like say, like, how am I making these decisions and how is that going to impact what I want tomorrow or next year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you, and a lot of these concepts that you're running over right now, it's new to me in ways. So I'm doing this course called Exit DNA. Mac Lackey, I don't know if we talked about him last time, but Mac Lackey, he's incredible guy, has had 6 exits, he's an angel investor at 75 plus companies. He's just released a book actually today, all about this whole process. Anyway, until I started going through this course, I never even considered why am I even doing what I'm doing? It was always sort of, I think I've probably followed the classic founders situation, and even to our evolution as a business is I saw a gap in the market. I knew that we could build it a bit better because I went down every single potential sales funnel I could find and just said, they've all done it wrong, or it could be improved, or this one's good, but I take a bit of that and, solve the problem. And then we built the second business and that solves an even bigger problem. But then, what is the end game here? Like, are we trying to build a cash flow business where we say, right, we're just going to keep running these. They're going to run in perpetuity. We're going to keep growing them. We keep reinvesting. And, I'm going to take a great salary eventually and everything's great. Or am I building it for exit value? Am I trying to have a liquidity event? Am I trying to say, you know what, I'm going to reinvest everything. I'm going to absolutely ram the growth up there. I'm going to look for the right prospective buyers that might exist in other markets. And, it's a strategic play for them. Do I split the business? So just,
about it.
Yeah. So I'm saying just you expressing that and going through that consideration, it's in your head now of, well, am I making a calculated decision? What are my options? I didn't even know my options, honestly, 6 months ago. I was still sort of building for the sake of building. So yeah, I mean, I'm already excited to keep digging into. I've listened to a bunch of the episodes, but also, I'm familiar a little bit with what you're doing right now. And, it feels like a very, I was going to use the word synergy, and that is just an awful word to use. So it just felt like it feels like a good fit.
Innovation and synergy.
Yeah. Do it now.
Well, I think just to pull on the string there, because like the word exit freaks people out. And here's my assessment on why, and I hope that my opinion can change over time, is people 99% of people can't afford to sell their company because of their lifestyle. I got a client right now that's trying to sell his business for about 50 million and he can't afford to because he's got $1 million lifestyle. So like, what do you do about that? Like, and so what happens is people, they freak out because they think they have to sell it on a seller's note to their manager for like drama, carry all the risk, the cash flow pay. It just makes no sense. Or sell your soul, pull the ripcord, they got the business of my whole story. And there's like 1,000 and almost an infinite amount of like options and ways you can structure it depending on what's important to you. And so like this word exit, I hate, and there's this whole exit planning industry. I was the first person in Minnesota to get my certification or second or something like that. And like, I get so frustrated because like, what does it even mean? Is it like an advanced estate plan or tax plan or wealth management plan? That has nothing to do with the damn business. So you know who has the best exit plans is private equity firms because they buy the damn company. They go, here's what it's worth today. In 7 years, it's going to be worth 3 times as much. We're going to do these things over the next 7 years. The problem with the PE industry is that they do really bad things. Potentially, a lot of them get stuck doing bad things because they're optimizing from some fictitious investor timeline instead of the entire long term of growing value. So, like, this whole word exit, I know you've mentioned the Exit DNA course. I just want to be cautious for anybody that gets freaked out. I sit on calls all day long, Yanni, with people that are 50 to 70 years old that have multiple multi-million dollar businesses and they're totally trapped, totally trapped. And they wake up and they're going, I really didn't think I'd be in this position after working my ass off for 30 years. And you're going, yeah, it's a bummer because you just put your head in the sand like an ostrich and you just woke up and go, oh, hopefully someone's going to pay top dollar for this pile of you know what that I sucked every dollar out of for 20 years. And you're just like, it's your fault. You know, I wish you would have known that, huh?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad that I'm, at this stage in my career, at least going through it. And, the podcast definitely serves as a means to get to that, that education. Question though, you sort of bring up a really interesting point there is that, for those who are at whatever stage, let's say 60, 70 years old, they're at that point where they've, sucked the damn thing dry and, they haven't built this growth plan. Is the challenge there around their decisions really like, I haven't built an exit strategy. And as a result, like, what are the challenges that they're actually facing?
Good question.
What are these key challenges?
So there, I'll quickly brush up. So our framework, we've got 5 principles. The first one is called your drivers. What do you want from this business and why? Just truly articulate. Is it a lifestyle? Is it disrupting industry? Is it hanging out with your friends? Is it a charitable impact or whatever it is? Second principle is your financial targets. There are 3 of them. Your ideal annual income, your target net worth outside of the business, and then the value of the business net after taxes if you were to sell it today. So you can track that. So there are 3 targets there. And the third principle is exit options. And there are 5 big buckets that we bucket them into. Each one of those will impact your timing, your role post closing, how much money you get upfront versus over time, and how it's valued. So understanding the first and second principle is in order to view your exit options is extremely important. Otherwise, how the hell are you going to make a decision? So then once you round that corner, you get the principle 4, which is increased value, which is de-risking your cash flow, growing the enterprise value of the business in light of which exit option is right for you inside of your timeline of your target valuation with what you want. Then the 5th principle is you hire your team of advisors. So that way you can sit down and you can say, hey, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Tax person, estate planning, banking, financing, legal, like consultants, anybody that you can look at to help you accomplish what you're trying to go. Now they're not trying to guess what you want, which is what we dealt with. And I see people every single time. So I think it's that understanding of like, hey, here's what I want. And then just reverse backing into that plan. And I'm losing the thought of what the original question is, or like how to.
Well, do you know what? I was asking the question about what the problem is. What's the problem they find themselves? But actually, forget that question for a second, because I think what you've named a few of. I don't think you've named all 5 of the principles around your framework. You've named a couple, if I'm not mistaken here, and I think that
your drivers financial targets, exit options, increased value, team of advisors.
So those are your five, principles around your framework and how it operates. And I think for a lot of people that'll be listening to this, and I think that a really interesting thing that we've actually spoken about beforehand is that, I'm playing personally pretty heavily in the e-commerce space, and there is this absolute enormous push right now. VCs enter the market, PE, private equities coming in strong now as well, or starting to. It's no more chatter anymore. It's actually happening. And for a lot of people who are owning Amazon businesses and people that have been listening to this right now, is that how it's almost created a new asset class as an Amazon business. An FBA, fulfillment by Amazon business, is a new asset class, and how they're selling them is depending on how good your broker is, or the relationship you have with the VC, or how good your negotiation skills are. You'll see effectively a return of either a 3, 4, 5, up to, let's say, a 9 times multiple if you're really, really good and you're talking bigger deals and you're going to strategics and PE, not just VC. But VC, you're probably looking at 2.5 to probably at the higher end 5 at the moment. I think that people are very, very caught up in that consideration, and that everyone's buying and they're all racing to it. But I think a lot of people fail to ask the question as to, well, why? Why am I selling this? Why did I build the business in the first place? And I think, to dive a little bit deeper into your framework, it answers a lot of these questions. So for anyone listening and going through it and being approached every single day, literally in their inbox, in their LinkedIn, in their everything, I mean, it's a great problem to have, right? I'd love everyone just hit me up if you're trying to buy a business. No, but seriously though,
that's so true though.
What's your advice to them based on your framework?
I appreciate the question. I think this will tie back to the original question I didn't answer, is like, what the hell do you want and why? And how can you act? How are you making these decisions? Like, the amount of people that don't know the difference between enterprise equity and net proceeds of a value of a company. I'm like, well, if you don't even know that and you're going to go sell your company for a couple $1 million, like, doesn't that scare you? like our business was doing 20 million in revenue. And how many people go, oh, I bet you the Tansom sold that for 40 million. I'm like, oh my God, are you out of your mind? You take a multiple of EBITDA, you pay your taxes, you pay your debt, and you're left with whatever I call it the plinko. They call it waterfall. It's like you get what's left.
Yeah.
And then you go, well, shit, I don't have enough money to live my lifestyle anymore. Bummer. Or you find it out at the deal table and then you pull the plug. So you spent a couple $100,000 in advisors and distractions and all this shit. And then all of a sudden you're like, I can't afford to sell this. The amount of people that figure that out at the deal table is shocking. And if you just look at the numbers of size of companies and how they're valued, 99% of these people can't afford to sell and maintain their lifestyle because they didn't save enough money outside the business. So essentially they're going, okay, if I got a $250,000 lifestyle, say I'm making 20 grand a month. Okay, you need 5 million in the market with a 4% return to never touch a principal. That's just that's the baseline. Okay. In order to, did you save $1 million out? Okay, well, now you need to net 4. If you save 2 million, now you need to net 3. And these are just some basic like decision trees. And you go, like, people don't figure this out until they've spent all the money. They're just racing towards that because they want someone to eliminate their stress and headaches. And it's like, okay, well, someone's willing to pay you a lot of money for this. Do you ever think about looking at your business differently and going, okay, well, because it's okay to say I'm not able to take it to the next level, or I'm not able to reinvest. But like last week we were sitting down, and I'm going to get back to the e-commerce because we can talk specifics about like the Thrasio and all these people that are rolling all these companies up. But like sitting down with a client last week, and she wants to go from 10 million to $15 million revenue business, 1.2 in EBITDA to 2 million. $5 million valuation to 12. So she can go from netting 3 million to netting 9. Very specific numbers tied to this. Okay. Then you go, okay, if you build out her financials and the plan for her business financials and the strategic plan for the next 4 years, how is she going to get there? Well, okay, well, we need to hire 5 more salespeople. They need to hit this kind of quota. They need to do this. It's going to take this kind of working capital, and we're going to actually invest to grow the EBITDA, to grow the multiple by de-risking the company. And she goes, holy shit, I need to grow at 30% year over year, and I've only grown at 10% year over year. That's going to cost more money. I'm going to run out of cash in year 2. I don't want to do that. I'd rather just collect my 900 grand in distributions over the next year and not do that. And then I'm okay selling for less. Like,
but
she just
that's,
saved herself 4 years of horrible nightmares, like just by seeing that.
and and that is just something that people really, unless you've been through it, unless this is your expertise, unless you've sold businesses before, unless you've come with an intentional framework that is around growth, you're not seeing these things. I mean, even again, I'm 3 weeks into this course, and it's totally changed my perspective of my why am I doing all that I'm doing? What is, it's not even, I mean, I'm not sure if we spoke about the infinite game and a few of those
Oh
other.
yeah, yeah. Infinite game
Yes.
and conscious capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. Conscious capitalism, infinite game. And so, there is no end game realistically, but at least, I'll speak for myself as well. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And as a result, we've got over 100 employees now in the business, and the demands are different in terms of the expectation, and I want to keep growing, I want to keep creating jobs. And so it's how do I remove myself from the business, but then you get dragged back in, and before you know, you're like, you've kind of lost control of the plan that you never had in the first place. So
That's the best statement ever. Yeah, it's so true. And like, and what's interesting, but because I like how you worded that, Yanni, but I'll say that like most entrepreneurs that start their business, they know everything about it and they're really good at the business. They know the market, they know their competition, they know where their product pricing fit or their service offering, or like, they're really good at it. And it's really, I did this podcast episode with this woman who's got a PhD and she studied business owners like this. And there's a direct correlation towards 2xing the value of your business and letting go of control. And the only way to do this, and I'll tell you a good story, is so when you don't have a plan, and what consists of a plan, and this is my definition of is you have your income statement, your balance sheet, and your cash flow statement projected out in the ground up, like in detail for 12 months, but then it's more high level for years 2 through 5, integrated with the value of the business. So you can literally, I can see what are my distributions for the next 5 years? What are my taxes? What's the value of my business lined up? I got a trailing 12 months. So I can actually like 360 degrees see the whole business, and the financials show just what all financials are is telling a story of what's actually going on. Just no one does them because they just use them as like, oh, what's my income statement? Do I have cash in the bank? Let's just run and hope things work out. And so like the next question, once you get the financials, you go, okay, am I confident that I'm going to hit those revenue numbers and those margin numbers? Well, if I'm not, it's usually because I don't have a good strategic plan of right customers, right products, right markets, right pricing, all those things. Because if you like, I've got a customer right now, they've got 2 different types of customers. If they doubled their customer or their company in one, they would go broke because it's high volume, high staffing, low margin. The other one's white glove consulting. I'm like, well, which one are you going to do? Like, I mean, so my point is like, to project that out, you're going like, that's my plan. And so to loop it back to what you're saying, Yanni, is that there's no way any entrepreneur is going to be comfortable going on a vacation for a month if they don't have a plan like that, because they're always going to get called back in because they're the only person that knows what's going on, regardless of the size of the company. I got people that have $50 million businesses, and this guy said it's like a submarine. This guy was in the Navy. He's like, I could put my hand in the bottom of the sub and I could feel how well it was working, but every once in a while, clunk, clunk, and I knew what was wrong, but no one else did. I was just like, so you're gonna always want to panic sell when you're tired and exhausted if you don't even have that plan for yourself. And it's the same thing that's going to discount the value of your company when you go to sell. So it's like this whole, like, the best thing for you and the business is to build a plan that creates more value, gives you more options, allows you to walk away, allows you also to go on vacation. So like, I don't know. The only reason I can come across is that why people don't do this is they don't have the ability to reinvest because their lifestyle has creeped into their business, or they don't know how.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I'm sitting here as well, and I'm listening to the fact that you've just literally effectively outlined like one of our issues in the not one of our issues, but that exact, I don't know if I'd call it a problem, but one of our businesses, our staffing business, Multiply Me, it's high volume, low margin, have to keep growing and bring more people on, and we hit that sort of critical mass, and that becomes a profitable business, and great, but we have to keep finding the right customers and growing it in the right way. The other is We've got a team of nearly 25 management consultants. It's, white
There you
glove,
go.
so, and so we're making really good
Different margins, I'm assuming, right?
very different margins.
So now let's break that. Let's just for entertain me for a second.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's
This is
say
what
you
I'm
got,
here to do, man. I want to learn.
Let's say it's 5 million. Let's say it's 5 million. You want to get to 10 million. Let's say half of your business is the staffing, half the business is the white glove. So you say, okay, well, I want to go from 5 to 10. Is it the direct ratio? And you go, okay, well, let's say the staffing's 10% margins and the white glove is 50% margins. And you go, okay, well, what we really care about is net income, the normalized EBITDA, and the multiple of that. So like, that's what we care about. So everybody's always solving for top line revenue. And it's like, well, if we were to project out from 5 to 10 million, and let's say that staffing, and you didn't intentionally say, here's the dollar amounts, if it's 5 million this year, 6 million, 7, 10, whatever that is, what's the makeup of it? What's the margin? And what's it going to cost to deliver those services at that margin? If you don't think through that, you're always going to be wondering, should we hire 2 recruiters inside to be generating the staffing that's going to then deliver the services? How do we deal with change orders or scope creep? Well, this business, it might be handled differently than this business. And then if you project that out, you might say, well, we literally run out of cash in 2023 if we scale the staffing because we think and we're pretending it's the consulting. Like with this client of ours, they were literally like, if they just said, hey, and this owner started 25 years ago and they really like being valued by the client. It's like so fine, but like, so they don't really get excited about the staffing, even though that meat grinder of just deploying people, a third of them quitting, not showing up, and then doing that over and over and over again makes a lot of money. But like the money's not that guy's deal. So now it's like, how do we project this out to get the normalized EBITDA and the value that we want over the next 1 to 4 years? So that way they could do an ESOP or do a private equity recap. So it's very intentional, but we have to understand where the revenue and what the cost structure is going to be to get to the normalized EBITDA, to get to the end goal. And people don't think through what kind of revenue, what kind of cost structure they need and how that translates into value.
Yeah. I mean, you're literally outlining exactly the conscious decisions we need to be making as what we've actually not officially decided, but we're sort of leaning that direction is we'll split the companies. Right now, they operate under the same LLC, but one of them is a management consulting practice focused on process improvement that is right now centralized around e-commerce. And the other is a staffing business where we focus on e-commerce roles. But the reality is we're also placing roles in lots of other industries as well. And we're actually seeing a lot of success. So, when I think about, well, what's the value? What value are we creating here? One is the same company, let's say, and when I talk about like an exit, for me, it's exactly what you defined as, I don't want to be entirely central to the business. I want to actually live a good life, and I want to have the processes and the workflows and the personnel and everything in place so that I can go on holiday if I wanted to for a month. I know I love what I do, so I don't know if I take a month off, but at least, 2 weeks here and there and enjoy and also focus on more of the things that I want to be doing in the business. So
let's pull that thread. So I would say a clearer way of saying it is you have 2 roles, Yanni. You are the owner of this financial asset that might be 2 financial assets, but you have an equity stake. You were conflating your ownership with your management role. So your vacation has nothing to do with you owning a financial asset. Do you have to submit your time card to Apple to get time off? No, it's a freaking investment. That's exactly how you should be thinking about your business. So like your time is tied to your job or your activities. And so like, honest to God, so like Arkona, we've been in business for 2 years. I mean, I've been doing lots of other things with other consulting. I call it my 1.0 version before I met my partner. And like our goal for 2021 is literally have enough free cash flow to have literally 50 to 60% of our time freed up to work on ownership, financial allocation versus working in the business of the job. But we're getting paid for the jobs that we're doing. So it's like splitting those two, because it goes back to your original point of when you say the word exit or transition, what are we talking about? Are we talking about your job and your time, or are we talking about your financial asset? Because you can literally sell part of your financial asset and keep your job. It's called an ESOP or your private equity recap. You can do different things depending on whether you're solving for your day-to-day job and leadership roles or the liquidity of your financial asset.
Yeah, again, super valuable things to consider. I've been looking at it from the standpoint as well of, I'm dealing with a lot of companies that are talking about exit. And again, not that it's ever been a consideration or something that we're looking to do even right now, but it definitely has shifted my frame of consciousness as to, well, what's the perceived value from someone looking at the business as to the strategic decisions we're making internally. So right now we're going down the path of starting to build out technology. We're building technology for how to enable all of our team members are remote. So we're building things that are going to support our internal business, but also our clients' businesses. And that becomes its own technology play to manage remote workflows and things like leave tracking. And, it goes beyond like, probably in line with a hub staff type thing, but to focus on different problems that, that they're not solving because they're not going through our journey. And that's, again, I was talking about the classic journey of the founder. They solve a problem and then they realize that, I see all these people like, no, now they've got a technology company. That's just so interesting. And I'm just noticing that all these great service providers solve a problem typically with people. And then they realize, well, we could build a piece of technology and that could impact a whole lot more lives. And so
100%.
finding myself going down that road. We've got now, a bunch of full stack developers. We've got a technical project manager, UX UI designer, and we're just throwing like, I wouldn't say the kitchen sink at it, but we're strategically, moving our way into it. But yeah, I mean, the way you're sort of laying out the points right now, it's just making me add another layer of consideration around not just the exit intent, but the cash flow business, the lifestyle. What do I actually need today to make life work versus 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Like, I did an exercise with Mac's course where it's called, he's called it the great outcome. And inside of it, there's a whole lot of questions that you're asked. But one of them is like, what does your life look like 3 years from now? What's your marital status? What's your, talk about your income? Have you had an exit? All these things. And so like, I'm sitting there and I wrote down like, a stupid number around what I hope my, my income would be. And then I'm like, oh, I'd love to have an exit maybe. And then I'm like, well, those two things are actually conflicting because the reality is in my current state, because I can't afford to pay myself, this 6-figure salary and then also expect that 3 years from now you've sold a business here, because I've got to make strategic decisions. So just hearing you lay it out the way you are is absolutely helping me in my consideration and my decision making. But I'm sure anyone listening is probably going to be starting to think the same.
Well, it's like, you were earlier in the interview, you were talking about the question why. And like, dude, I just go back to like, my kids are 4.5, and like, I never ever want them to stop asking that question. Why? Because you have to answer it. And you have to know why you're doing what you're doing and what the effect or implications of your decisions are going to be. And like, the point of understanding these different parts in how I've created the principles or whatever anybody's using is like, if you can understand what you want in 3 or 4 years, not just some fictitious vision of like written on a piece of paper, like of like a paragraph, but like the specific numbers, the specific things that and essentially what choices are you going to have. By understanding the choices in 3 or 4 years, you can, I believe most business owners and entrepreneurs, if you understand that why in that context, dude, waking up and getting punched in the face every single day by owning a company, you kind of know, you got to know why you're doing it and enjoy it because it sucks sometimes. So by understanding the exit options or how you want your role to to evolve over time, or when and how you could get the return of the liquidity, makes you excited to do the hard work today. Instead of waking up when people get bored and you're just like, you know what, I'm done. And it's because they don't have a thing that they're marching towards. And so I think, to your point, if you just grow value, like, pretty much 99% of the time that the people go through our training, the only thing they have to do is grow value. But they now know why, and they're excited again because the big picture is clear and they can actually see how to connect the 4-year plan to today versus going, now I've got a clearer vision, but seriously no idea how to get there. Because if the vision is just to go from 1.2 in EBITDA to 2 million, to go from a $5 million valuation to 12, the goal is so that way you can have options in 3 or 4 years. And then you have choices and you have leverage. You have truly choices versus waking up when you're truly burnt out, going, I have no choices because the company's not worth what I want. I'm stuck in the business. And I've never, to this day, after 300 people going through our material in the last 12 months, when someone's not energetic and they're truly burnt out, good luck, man. There's no way, no dollar amount that can get them excited again to like their business from what I've seen.
Yeah, I can totally understand what that would feel like. I mean, it can be exhausting when you're the person who is answerable to the business, and you're just sort of going through it day by day. You almost go through the motions without a clear direction, or you have your ups and your downs. But I would just say having some sort of underlying purpose. So, like, even taking it back to the exit decision, like, okay, I want to exit, I want to make X million dollars on that exit. And the reason is because, yes, I want to buy a house, and I also want to reinvest into my next startup and be able to bootstrap that, so I don't have to go down the investor route and say, right, I can still make all the decisions. I've got more money to play with now. I can make better decisions for the next business that I'm building. I'm not, I'm 33 here, so I'm not sitting here saying I'm by any stretch. I'm just warming up.
Not done.
Yeah. So
well, and by the way, like, go and I know we're gonna probably get short on time here pretty soon, so let me know. But there's no wrong decision. If it's intentional, it could be that you don't want to reinvest. And like, I've had people go through our training and they're like, you know what? There's this one gentleman, $1.5 million revenue recruiting business, and other e-commerce businesses, Amazon businesses, where they say, you know what? I actually don't want this to be, I don't need or want this to be worth $5 million in 5 years. So with that mindset, they're going, if I'm going to optimize for distributions. And then, what happens is their anxiety of having to listen to all the other entrepreneurs around them, reinvest and grow and do this and build a Shopify. No, dude, I'm concerned about making $500,000 so I can do whatever the hell I want and travel around the world. And I'm putting a chunk of that into savings with a wealth manager or investments with real estate or whatever you're doing to retire that way. And but it's a decision. It's not what I like to call like the purgatory in between, where they're just doing all the flashy spending, not using the lifestyle, but also hoping that the business is going to be worth $5 million. So they get neither. They don't get the lifestyle over the next 5 years, and they don't get a company that's worth anything in 5 years.
I mean, it just makes so much sense when you lay it out like that, why I see so many entrepreneurs miserable. And it's just because they're not making strategic decisions on why they're doing it. And I think that too many people wear the number of hours that they do for work as a badge of honor, as a badge of honor. I mean,
that's crazy.
At what point in time did someone say, I'm creating a business so that I can work 80 hours a week and be an absolute slave to it? I mean, I don't,
I know one of my best friends, I met him like 5 years ago. He owns a healthcare business. He had already sold it he bought one when he was 21 with 100 employees and sold it by the time he was 24. And this guy is like the millionaire next door. He drives like some like shitty Ford or some Kia or something like that. And like the dude, like before he started, like now he's got a purpose. So he's reinvesting for like, cause he found a reason why, but for like 4 years, he worked like 5 hours a week and he was like 30. And he's like, I don't know, I'm making a bunch of money because I hired a bunch of people to do all this stuff for me. And like, I don't know why you would want to work more. I'm like, because that's a good question.
I mean, twin girls, 4.5 years old, mate. That is like 2 full-time jobs in itself right there. I can understand why you make good decisions around optimizing your life. I'm
what you perceive as good decisions. I'm still skeptical of whether I'm on the right track, but we'll leave it there.
well, you're at least making considerations and thinking about it.
I'm trying.
So that's at least a couple of steps ahead of most people going through that journey and going through, like, I've got to say, like, the notion of the grind and like the hustle and all these things, like, I fucking hate it. I hate that topic. I hate that position. I just think that I guarantee, I don't want to make outlandish statements here, but I would be surprised to find out that if you ask the question to some of these people who are just around the clock working, is this what you want to be doing? Is this exactly where you want to be? I'd be very shocked to find all of them, or even, maybe a handful of them. Some people are workaholics, so we'll give those workaholics that. But I don't think workaholics usually are there by design, by that's what I really want to be doing. If they ask them the why.
I couldn't agree with you more, man. And then let's take the insane outlier of like a Bezos or Elon Musk. And you go, okay, like if you want to essentially sell your soul to the progression of humanity, like that's a noble cause, but there's going to be no room for anything else. Like I'm not one to judge, but like I'm not jealous because I'm like, well, that's not what I want. I've got other priorities in life, and so I can't do that, and I'm okay with that. And so it's about saying like, here's given what's important to me, here's how to hold all that in balance and integrate it, not balance. I did a bunch of podcasts about time management and balance, and it's like getting the same thing. It's all bullshit. Like, dude, like what do you integrate everything so that we all have 168 hours a week, period. That's the great equalizer. What are you going to do with it, and what's important?
It really is that simple. If you break it all down and you design your life to optimize for what your optimal life looks like, then everything sort of makes a whole lot of sense. And, just to bring it back to, we were talking before about Geno and traction. I mean, that's really like in a very sort of microcosm of like, right, what I want to achieve in this period of time. How do I break it down to the lowest common denominator? How do I track it week on week and make sure that everyone in my team and their teams are working on their rocks, their 90-day goals and their personal ones, and how they get there, and everything sort of ladders up. So I think that the biggest learning that I take from this conversation, and also a lot of the conversations that I've been having lately, is that how do you design your life optimally for as far into the future that is realistic for you to even consider? And then how do you work backwards? And from that, every decision should be, is this making my life better? Yes, no. If no, then don't do it.
So what did your question that you asked yourself, what was the answer? How do you do that?
Yeah. Tough question, because for me, I looked at it as, what are the things that I'm good at? What are the things that I'm not good at? What are the things that I'm passionate about? And so, I sort of went down this list of like, well, I want to be able to travel. I mean, this year is a bit of a messed up year for travel, but in general, I want to be able to travel 3-4 times a year and actually take time off. I wanted to be able to go and visit, my parents and my family in Australia once a year. I want to get over to the US at least 3-4 times a year because I absolutely love it. And, work is also central to, the people that I work. So I sort of started working backwards like that. And then I thought, well, what do I really love doing? And, it might sound a little bit lofty, but I love the creative problem solving aspect, which I think is like, that is an entrepreneur, is that I want to solve bigger and bigger problems. And I want to find leverage to not do the sort of trivial and banal tasks that typically bog that most people down. And so how do I continue to sort of work backwards? So I'm still at an interesting stage. Like my business partner and I, we're super aligned and we're super passionate about sort of the technology play. And, we're both, pretty motivated, hungry and switched on guys. And we have complementary skills and an amazing chemistry. And so we're sort of working through together, like, how do we get there? If I look back, and I said, earlier on, we built the business because we saw a gap in the market and an opportunity, and we quickly grew that to a multi-million-dollar business in 18 months. But now it's like, well, we've got 140 people on staff. If we keep growing at this trajectory, we're going to be at like 300 or so at the end of the year. And then there's, all this other, like, is that the reality that I want to live? And if it is, well, how do I put the pieces in place to have it managed so that, my job is the job that I love doing and not the job that I have to do? And what does that 100%. What does that look like? So I haven't really given you the answer that you asked, but I'm still trying to figure out.
What you did is you start and you're on track. It's like you got to articulate it. That was, I mean, like you got to know what you want. Like, and you started talking about it, right? Which is okay. And like, I think people think that that's a waste of time, but like, it's the freaking quote from Gandhi or Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there, or whatever the hell it is. I just butchered it.
But the point, like, the point is there though. The point is there.
Right.
It's like fail to plan to fail.
Right. And here's the issue that I have had with EOS, because I love Gino and I love his system. I'm in the hotbed. Like there's like 3,000 or 4,000 companies in the Twin Cities running EOS. So like it's everywhere. And they assume that you know what you want and why when you put it on your VTO. And guess what? Those business owners have never sold a business, so they don't know how the end goes. So there's the blind leading the blind everywhere. And like the only way you can truly reverse engineer the plan is you have to understand what the pieces look like at the end. The only way to understand that is to actually educate yourself. Like there's otherwise the advisors are going to slowly be telling you, you're going to, through every interaction over the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to slowly learn more about what you want. Talk to this advisor, talk to that person, have this situation, have this partnership dispute, have this situation, out of the blue offer, have to reinvest in inventory over here. And you're slowly going to learn what you want versus sitting down and going, I'm going to learn this shit now. And so that way, every decision that comes at me, I can go, puzzle piece. Does it fit? Nope. It goes over here to this puzzle. And then you're just doing that instead of just flopping around like a fish out of water, man. I see it every day. Oh, you're on mute.
So I was saying, you said it, not me. EOS. I think it's an amazing framework for getting your business in order, right?
Run your business, meetings, accountability.
It's great. It's great for that. And even Peyton, when I was having a chat with him and we were talking about the consulting practice, and he's like saying, yeah, absolutely, you need to work with businesses like a Scala to actually build out what do those SOPs look like, what is the actual process flows, how do you map it out. He even also, like us, it's a great fundamental tool, but without that end outcome and that vision and that direction and actually understand,
man.
Yeah, it's not the be all and end all. It's an amazing framework, but it solves, one big piece of the puzzle for a lot of people.
Yeah, which is get your shit together. Make sure you have real meetings with real people that are real jobs that do the real work that you hired them to do. Then hold them accountable with the real KPIs, and everybody be grown-ups. I mean, I'm being a little harsh right now, but like, because it's great. And by the way, we weren't running EOS and we had all the problems that EOS could have solved, but we still should have done some work, because like to figure out what do you want, why. The amount of people that pick rocks that don't know whether that $100,000 ERP implementation is going to grow value or not. Right time, right place. Like, so wouldn't it be nice to have a lens of like, hey, this investment of this time and resources are going to grow value towards a direction that we want. So I think it's great. Like you said, it's just about understanding how these different components fit, then putting them together yourself. And pretty much the end of the day, the owner and the entrepreneur, the buck stops there. They're responsible for everything. And you can't hire out someone else telling you what you want and why and what success looks like for you.
Yeah, I mean, very, very eloquently put there. And I think that you make a really good point about that decision making, and it's the blind leading the blind here around that specific topic. You haven't gone through a liquidity event, an exit, an IPO, all these things. You're going through it for the first time. And so what you've done and your whole position is you've had 250 episodes plus the mentors, plus the advisors, plus the conversations with all these incredible people. You've invested in yourself and you have been able to build out this framework, leveraging your personal experiences, all these insights. So, you are you're woke, you're enlightened when it comes to actually understanding, like, why am I doing all of this? Whereas most people haven't invested the time. And I feel very grateful that while I'm a far cry from where you're at, you're actually helping people move through this process. And when I end this recording, the next conversation we're going to have is how do I get more involved, because you really speak my language here. But is you've done the work to understand the considerations, and that, again, you want to take more cliche sayings, knowledge is power. And
then what does it go, Yanni? It's like knowledge is power, but then wisdom is actually applying it. And the problem is that there's a lot of people out there that you get their value builder certification, their exit planning certification, this and that. I'm like, you've never ran a business, man, or a woman. I just, there has to be a little bit of like, I've been there, done that, or got people around me. And then people that don't have a very, very high motivation to lead you to a certain outcome, whether it's selling a product or service or buying your company or investing in your company or whatever it is. Like, have the lens of like, where's the advice coming from? And then how do you learn so that way you can, because again, I think we all, to put the bow on it, is I think we all start businesses to have that freedom and control over the decision making, and we're trying to get it back. And unfortunately, EOS can get you more time by organization, but like, you have to understand these things so then you can eliminate the anxiety of knowing exactly how to progress you towards the vision that you originally had, instead of waking up knowing that you're far away and burnt out.
Yeah, I mean, mate, the value that I've gotten on a personal level from this session would, yeah, I don't even rival it. I would probably almost comfortably say this has been the most valuable hour that I've spent in the nearly,
Awesome. I appreciate
40 plus hours I've been recording. Just amazing. And on that note as well, I'd love to get you back on, because, I feel like we're just scratching the surface. And yeah, I mean, this is what you do. This is what you do day in, day out.
About it.
Yeah.
Tell me to shut up sometimes.
No, mate, keep it coming. But on that note, I will tell you to shut up this time, just because I do have to jump on another call. But no, in all seriousness, Ryan, it's been incredible having another opportunity to sit down and chat with you. I know that, like I said, I got a ton of value out of this, and there's absolutely no way that people who choose to tune in and listen to this will not experience the same value, because I mean, I could write I could write a book on the show notes as to the different values, but effectively you can help people get through this. So before I do let you go, how do people get in touch with you, and how do people actually leverage all this wisdom that you have in helping them make better decisions for their life and their life in business?
So the easiest place is the website, Arkona, ARKONA.io. And there's some videos on there that explain our process and the framework. So there's training. So there's an online training that they can look at, and we've got the curriculum up there. The podcast tab has got all the podcast episodes. And then there's also a download where we got this lead magnet, and you fill out your email address. I swear we only send you 5 emails, which are 5 videos that explain the process. And then once people go through the training, we have fractional CFO services and strategic planning. And that's how to get in touch with us, man. The goal is that people, they need to understand and they need to trust, and because people need to be ready to learn, right? Like, you can't force anybody. So this has to be a desire that people want. So the website's the best place.
Amazing. And that's honestly the exact needs that we have right now, is that we've got a financial controller. We need a fractional CFO. We need to make.
I thought it was your pops, man.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
We don't have enough time to go down that.
Sorry, Dad. I mean, they can take you so far, right? We fight too much, though. But yeah, you want to get someone who's going to be more serious and dealing with this in the day-to-day, as rather than just a side gig and a hobby. But mate, seriously, it's been a privilege having you here, and can't thank you enough. So yeah, I'll let you know when it airs, but realistically, let's set up the next one, because I would love to have you back.
Yeah. So shoot me the link. I'll be happy to. This is a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, my friend.